All right, so today we are going to talk about the effects of westward expansion. So our question for today is, what were the causes and effects of the Transcontinental Railroad and obviously westward expansion? So those are the standards that we will address today. Quick recap. What did the Homestead Act and the Pacific Railway Act do? Okay, now remember, you can sum this up in one thing that just says, like what they do collectively, encourage movement west. Cool. But we could break it down as well. Remember, the Homestead Act gave people who are willing to live on the land for 5 years and improve on that land through farming and building up towns and things like that, 160 acres of free land. Pacific Railway Act authorized the Union Pacific Railway Company to locate, lay out, build the railroad, and maintain it, which also started that Transcontinental Railroad building. Eventually it is finished, and now we've got East and West connected. So just a little recap, kind of refreshing what we've been talking about this week. Manifest destiny. This is this idea that the U.S. is destined by God to expand and spread democracy and capitalism across the entire North American continent. So essentially, it's our God-given right to move west. This justified and encouraged westward expansion. God told us we should do it. God gave it to us. We got to go out there and do God's work. Okay. We also analyzed this photo. There was a video clip in one of the previous lessons from this week that analyzed and looked further at this painting and its significance and how it embodies this idea of manifest destiny. So manifest destiny gave us the justification, the reason, the permission. Then we got to get out there. So the Transcontinental Railroad was completed in 1869. The Pacific Railway Act is what brought about the plans and the construction of this Transcontinental Railroad. The Union Pacific and Central Pacific Railroad meet at Promontory Point or Promontory Summit, Utah, and this signifies the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad and the first time that the country is connected. The Homestead Act is passed in May of 1862. And just like I said, 160 acres of free land to those who will live there for 5 years and improve. The Indian Wars. So we've got the way to get out there. We've got the permission to get out there. Now we've got to deal with the Native American problem. So we have this Indian Wars era that comes about. And it's the Native Americans and the white settlers, as well as the U.S. Army, fighting over land, resources, and broken treaties. Because there were these treaties, and remember, a treaty is a peace agreement that the U.S. and the Native Americans had agreed on, and these treaties were continuously broken. Problems in the homestead. The land wasn't suited for crops many had been used to planting, extreme weather conditions, wind, loneliness, insects, claim jumpers who were trying to steal claims to lands that weren't theirs, poor housing, which led to disease and many times death. Education, religion, and medicine are done at home with the immediate family. And then banks, railroads, and other companies blocked water sources and forced the homesteaders off of their land. So it wasn't just happy-go-lucky, everybody's frolicking over in the West and the Great Plains. All right, so let's break down cause and effect for just a second. So cause, it is what caused something to happen. It's the reason it occurred. It's what happened before the event. So we have causes of things, then things happen, then we have effects. So an effect, what happened because of something? What is the result of what occurred? It has to happen after. So let's explore cause and effect and look at some examples before we jump into causes and effects of the Transcontinental Railroad and westward expansion. So first example, so you failed a test. That is the event, that is the thing that happened. So what caused you to fail the test are things that happened before you failed the test. So you didn't study, you didn't sleep well the night before, and you missed the review day the day before. So that caused you to fail the test. As a result of failing a test, these are the effects. Your grade in the class goes down. You get grounded at home because your parents are upset that you failed a test. And you have to come to tutorial and or office hours in order to learn what you missed, hopefully gain some points back, so on and so forth, okay? Here's another example. Schools close. You all are sitting at home right now and not in the school building. So we got to go back a little bit and see, well, what caused schools to close? Well, COVID is first reported in China. COVID comes to the U.S. and then it quickly spreads throughout the U.S., causing schools to close. Now schools are closed. What are the effects? What are the results? What are the outcomes? So schools are empty. Students are learning remotely and teachers are teaching from home. So that's kind of breaking down cause and effect. Okay, because you got to think about, well, we talked about the causes of the Transcontinental Railroad and westward expansion. Then it happens. Then what's the results? What are the effects of those things happening? So the settlers' experience. These are going to be some of these effects of this westward expansion. So some groups found success and opportunities while others faced many hardships. So remember, the cowboys, long, difficult, boring journeys. The 49ers came to strike it rich, but it was more difficult than they thought. Mormons came to escape persecution, yet still faced it for their practice of polygamy, like we talked about. The railroad owners made millions through exploiting their workers. Women, it was difficult and lonely, but they did play a really big role in making settlements permanent. Exodusters, these are former and fugitive slaves looking for freedom, but faced discrimination and prejudice. Chinese immigrants came to work on the railroad and mine, but faced discrimination and prejudice as well. And then the Donner Party, they took a shortcut to California and they resorted to cannibalism to fight starvation. So a lot of them struggled. Some found some success, but most of them struggled and faced many hardships. The effects of the Transcontinental Railroad. So here are some of the effects of the Transcontinental Railroad, although there's many, many more. So geographic and environmental challenges, rivers and canyons that had to be crossed, mountains had to be tunneled through. They blast tunnels through the Sierra Nevada mountains. And then they had to deal with other environmental challenges like blizzards, locusts, which are these huge bugs, heat, drought, so very harsh climate. Federal incentives. So what did the government gain from this? Well, they got land, but they also had to deal with this Native American problem. Gold was discovered, so mining companies started up. So this brought a lot of money and wealth to the U.S. government. Quicker transportation for people and goods. Access to more resources, and this huge turning point of connecting the East to the West. So remember, we talked about how we needed access to these resources, but we also needed markets. Industry is booming and growing on the East Coast, and so we need somebody to sell and get all of these goods to. And opening up that West helps to make that happen. Settlement patterns. So where did the settlers move? The Great Plains, some states like Oklahoma, the Southwest area, Colorado, Montana, Omaha, California, Utah, just to name a few. But all of those like Midwestern areas, as well as even all the way out to California. Native American resistance. So remember, we talked about the Red River Wars, the Battle of Little Bighorn, the Sand Creek Massacre. And remember, the Battle of Little Bighorn was one of the biggest Native American successes of this Indian Wars era. This was when General Custer went up against like thousands of Native Americans with a few hundred soldiers, and all of the U.S. Army was killed, also called Custer's Last Stand. Wounded Knee was the final event and marked the end to the Native American, to the Indian Wars era. And this was a massacre of Native Americans. The impact on the Native Americans, they were isolated, impoverished, which just means that there was a lot of poverty. They lost a lot of their resources and their way of life, disease, and even death. It also destroyed their resource of the buffalo, as well as their way of life through assimilation. Remember, we talked about assimilation is where you let go of your culture to become part of the dominant culture, either by choice or by force. And in this example, it's more by force. Cattle culture and the open range farming. Cattle towns transferred meat to other markets. They hired cowboys, but it was a dangerous and lonely and hard job. Barbed wire, remember we talked about that and how it brought an end to open range farming because barbed wire kept the cattle contained, so the cattle could no longer just freely range throughout the area. And so this affected the cowboys. Next, economic impact. Well, this helped the U.S. economy. It helped develop new, more efficient farming. So the word efficient just means you do the best job the quickest. So you want, if you're starting a business, you want to be efficient because you want to make the best product the cheapest way, the fastest, so that you can make the most money. And so these new efficient farming techniques allowed for greater production and to make more money in a smaller amount of time. The beef industry boomed because remember, we've got all those cattle just free roaming out west. It connected east and west, so now we have greater trade, transportation, which also brings money, and resources, as well as this access to gold. Labor, so who helped build the railroad? Remember, Chinese immigrants came first to help with like mining with the gold rush, but then they used them for building the railroad, and a big motivation for that was because they were really impressed with the Chinese and how they were able to build the Great Wall of China. So they're like, well, if they can do that, they can definitely help us with the railroad. Irish and German immigrants, former soldiers, and former slaves. So they were able to experience share in some of the wealth, not as much as they should have, but some of that wealth in the opportunity of moving out west. So today's activity, today's assignment, you are going to complete this worksheet. And so you are going to have to discuss the causes and effects of the Transcontinental Railroad and westward expansion. So you're just going to type, give me at least 4 causes and 4 effects. So remember, we talked about causes. What caused westward expansion and Transcontinental Railroad? Okay. What caused it? And we talked about those in the beginning, and we've talked about them all week. Then give me the effects. What are the outcomes? What are the results of the building of the Transcontinental Railroad and westward expansion? One thing that can help you with the causes and effects of Transcontinental Railroad and westward expansion is this video. It's about 8 minutes long, but it really breaks down and does a phenomenal job of breaking down the causes and effects of westward expansion and this manifest destiny idea that caused that westward expansion and motivated and justified that movement out west. Okay, so use the video to help you complete the worksheet, and it's on your Google Classroom.